Chassis setup, corner balancing, weight balance, all that stuff is super important as we approach amazing speeds on our MPRC cars. I recently noticed that I had some very odd offsets on my front end when it comes to what I needed to get to achieve corner balance. I also wanted to make some changes to the setup of my car. So that's what we're gonna go over here in the video today. I'm Chad, this is the Dorky M40 RC channel, and we are gonna make you faster today. So I'm just kind of playing around and looking things around here on the bench, figuring out how the video is gonna go. I do know that it is 2022 and not 2019. Editing mistake in the video, or maybe I was tired, but a couple of you guys caught me on that. I want to give a huge shout out to everybody, all my close friends, of course, on the channel. All of you guys are close friends, but I definitely want to give a shout out to my buddy Tim, Dave, Power Mad Racing, Stu, Rufus, Coach, all you guys know who you are, and to the Make My Fun RC guys for having me on at their live stream the other night. I'll leave a link to their video again down there. We had a great discussion if you guys want to check that out. But let's get to like setup and everything on this car, because we've made some pretty big changes to the car, small in numbers, but really big when it comes to how they are going to affect the car. So there's gonna be a lot of talk and science, and we're even gonna bust out Microsoft Paint for this one, which should be interesting. So let's do it. Take a look here at the bench. You can see that we've got a lot of stuff going on here. We've got the entire car set up, and we've got all these crazy looking tools and everything like that. Now that is our toe camber adjustment setup that we have, and it's also resting on a very sturdy level putty setup board. Got one of these boards. There's all kinds of different things that are out there. If you have a granite countertop, that'll work as well. It's kind of up to you how far, how much you want to spend, and what you want to take with you or leave on your bench. Now, I am using currently this setup tool set from Beef Tubes. Now, this stuff is a little expensive. You need this, of course, along with that setup board, and then they also have a camber gauge as well. If you're looking for an alternative that works just as well, what I used before in the past, and I still use from time to time, is going to be the stuff from Barth Racing Concepts. And at a third of the price, he's got a full 3D printed setup, and all you're going to need to do to adjust your actual toe is just use like a flat piece of angle iron to put it against there, and it works out very well. It's worked out well for me for years. I just picked up the Beef Tube setup just because I wanted to try something different and show you guys some more options if you got some little bigger pockets. Now keep in mind, if you go the route with the BRC stuff, you're also going to have to pick up a regular camber gauge and stuff as well. So get one from RPM. They also have a toe gauge setup, which doesn't seem to be very accurate or have many reviews. So I would definitely, in this case, recommend to go with the BRC setup or this Beef Tube setup that I'm trying out as well. So the one thing I like about the Beef Tube setup is that it does have all of these machine parts that are with it. So you can see everything just bolts to the wheels, and you've got these nice brackets and everything, and it's a very clean setup when it's all said and done. So why is this stuff so important? Well, we already talked about that at the beginning of the video. When you do any kind of like big changes to your car, or you just haven't actually touched the car in a while, you're always going to want to double check setup. You're going to get all of your information, of course, from your actual kit manufacturer setup sheets. Now, since I'm running a B6 kit, 5-star kit, they have their own setup sheets as well. And they look a little something like this. Pretty much tells you how to build the car, where to set things up. And at first, if you're new, this can be kind of overwhelming. But this is the stuff that we really need, and this is really what separates the difference between like your RTR type of cars like a DR10 and a more advanced kit, is you have more options to do things like this. So some of the first setup changes that I actually did was I changed the actual pill inserts in there so I could decrease my rear toe and kind of get that all lined up a little. How we do that is with these little pill trees that come in, and these pills basically are inserts that go inside the C and D block that will help angle up, down, left, right the rear hinge pins in our actual car. And what that looks like, if you want to take a look at my amazing drawing here. So if we look here on the top, we've got and look at the car here. So front, back. So in the back here, you've got the C block and you've got the D block. And luckily associated, they kind of break all this stuff out for us. They show us what arrangement of pills we need for our toe angles and for our anti-squat angles. And at first, looking at this, it can be kind of overwhelming, but it's really simple. On each one of your trees, you're going to have basically these pills that have the number 1 on them. You're going to have 0.5, and then they're going to have dots. They're either going to be pointing up or they're going to be pointing to a corner. And then when you look at your actual setup sheet and it says, you know, like we need to put a pill right here in the center top and then in the D block in the center bottom, that will actually end up giving us a different type of adjustment. And you know what that looks like is the CD block. If you kind of look up here where it says side to the left, we're running top to bottom -1 anti-squat, which is pretty much about as much as you're going to be able to get, because you're not going to be able to really kick those things up or down at very extreme angles just because of the nature of how they're built, and you're not able to like bend a big heavy hinge pin type of thing. So if you look down here at the actual available numbers of anti-squat, you can kind of play around with them a little bit if you wanted to, but we're running in a 1 up, 1 down position here, and that is giving us a 1 degree. That's the recommended kit setup. Really no need for me to go any different. Your chassis, of course, may be different. Now, if we look at the actual toe angles, I was running a 3 degree toe angle. And what I've done, and that was based off of the actual recommended setup sheet, but you know, that really puts the wheels, you know, kind of cockeyed in the back. Some people have actually brought that up, you know, said, hey, it looks like a lot more than 3 degrees. It wasn't, it was 3 degrees. So what we've done now is actually bring that into 2 degrees. So what we've done with our rear toe is we've actually brought those in closer to the chassis and still kind of left that offset. So we decreased that number to 2, and that will straighten out the wheels just a little bit. You don't want to run like a 1 or 0 on the rear toe unless you want to. You know, some people will say, oh, you're just losing speed, but you know, it's really insignificant. You know, buggy racers, everybody does that. It really just does help create straightforward traction and stuff in your car. And then there's other things that are involved too, like when we get into talking about camber and how the car can start to roll. And if you have too much toe and you go into more of a positive camber situation, then you're going to be rolling on the inside or the outside of the tire, whichever way you have it set up. And that's going to scrub speed and create instability as well as the tires grow when we're going down the road. The reason why I did that as well is to just kind of bring the actual car itself in a little bit. So my pill configuration now, instead of having the pills straight up and straight down, are now in the actual corners pointing toward the chassis, and I'm getting 2 degrees now in this configuration. So I basically narrowed the car and actually kicked it in a little bit, which is working out very well. And it's something, you know, at some point maybe you guys want to try if you are still running a standard setup. So this is how everything looks here. If we look at here from the side, this is the anti-squat, the C block in the front, the D block in the rear. So we've got like a little downward pitch. So we're at -1. If we look at our top front toe here, we are kicked out to 1 degrees. Now, a lot of people will run 0. I was running about 2, 2.5. So I brought those in a little bit to 1. I still like to have a little bit of front of toe out. Some people like to run 0. That's kind of up to you. Of course, in the back here, we are running 2, as I said. And then when we take a look over here at camber, over here, it's hard to see your mouse when you're using paint. You can see in the front, I'm running -1, and that's basically how much the actual tire is going to lean in. A positive would be if the top of the tire is leaning out. And in the rear, we are running a -2 camber, which seems to be a pretty well set up because, you know, again, as the car is going down the road, you know, these things are going to pitch back and forth. And what you don't want to happen is you don't want to have you know, a zero camber setup, so that when your car might roll a little bit or pull one way, that you're actually going into like a positive camber situation. When you start on a negative and then you kind of go into that actual, you know, type of rolling motion, then that means that you're always going to have at least one tire that is going to be close to zero or close to like minus. So that way you're never in like a positive camber situation where you've got, you know, your tires like this and they're not spinning. You're always going to have one that's close to like making perfect contact with the ground. So -2 just seems to be like that perfect setup situation that many people recommend. I've always ran that and it works out very well for me. So I hope that kind of helped explain things a little bit. Let me know and we'll show you in theory how we're doing it here on the bench. So now that we know what we are going to actually measure, now we need a way to measure it, and that's where the Barth Racing Concepts kit or the actual Beef Tubes kit comes into play. And you can see here that I have the Beef Tubes kit set up on everything here. I've got all 4 wheels installed. I've got their actual front tow bar here, which is just a, you know, nice long piece of carbon fiber. You actually get 2 of these based on what kind of toe that you want. So you get 0 to 3 degree adjustments. You know, you just flip them over and they are cut precisionally differently. So like this one here, you can see is very extreme. That is your 3 and 2 if you're looking for that much toe on the front. I am using just 1 degree, and these only work in positive. They do not work in negative. So don't know how you would actually achieve that, but it's pretty simple. I mean, I would recommend the first thing that you want to do is you want to set your camber. So I have my camber gauge right here set to -2. Again, if you have the RPM one, same principle. I've got these fake carbon fiber plate tires set up here. You can always use just your regular tires if you want to, and an RPM gauge, get you in the ballpark. This is a little bit more precise, even though, of course, based on your tire gluing and tire wear, when you put them on there, there might be a little bit of a variance. So when you have everything basically set how you want it, all you're going to do is just push your camber gauge up against here. And of course, you're just going to make your adjustments back here on your turnbuckles. So that way you can control your camber on your rear tires. The toe and everything, of course, is set from the pills as we described earlier, right here. Things that you get in the buggy kit that you don't get necessarily in a DR10. And then we did the same thing with the front, as far as going and adjusting camber. And then we went ahead and did the toe. And the best way to do the toe, of course, is you're going to want to have your car turned on. You're going to want to have your trim centered, radio turned on, and everything like that. So your servo is fully engaged. And then with this kit right here, it's got like these long extensions and kind of metal braces right here. And I found that I have to basically lift the car up just a little bit to get it in there. And then I push this thing all the way back to the back here. So just kind of have to lift the car up and get this actual measurement bar inside here, and everything's powered up again, as we said. And then we're just actually going to make adjustments here to these rear turnbuckles, and that is going to kick things either in or out. And then we have a nice easy measurement here and a nice contact patch. So everything is nice and flat. The Barth Racing Concepts one is very easy to see as well, because they are a lot wider than these. So I've been kind of having to look and double check a little bit more on this. So the one thing I do like about this is the big piece of carbon fiber. So I maybe talk to Tim down the road about maybe just printing out some of these long pieces. I think that they would maybe make things a little bit easier, but again, it's kind of nice to have the color printed 3D plastic. So I definitely would recommend that you choose a bright color when you purchase this type of a tool from him, maybe like a blue or something like that. And then you put it up against like a darker or like a silver piece of, you know, the flat angle iron or something like that. So you can actually look down and see the difference between the two different things that you're trying to do. The carbon fiber being shiny and the lighting and stuff like in here made it a little bit difficult. And you really want to be as precise as you can with this stuff, so that way you have to make actually less adjustments out in the field. Usually when I go out and do this, as much time as I spend in here, I always still have to do some kind of steering trimming or something like that. I'm pretty confident though with this setup that things are definitely going to go straight. Never have had a problem with it not going straight, but if things do start kicking one way to another, and I notice that I have to mess with my steering trim a little bit too much, then maybe I will come back and revisit it. So this is a very, very important part of getting everything set up and going. And we spoke about what spawned this entire thing. Now we are done with this. We're going to go ahead and slap the tires back onto this car and put the battery back in and everything, and we are going to actually scale and weight this thing out, which is pretty much the thing that drove this process. So let's get started on that right now. So what we're going to do now is we are going to corner scale this thing up, and if you take a look at actually what I've done in paint here, you know, when you look at your corner scales, you've got kind of like a corner to corner weight that of course, you know, we want to be the same. So, you know, you want it to come out to 50-50, and you kind of want everything to be similar. And the other thing that you really want is you want to make sure that you are not like off like I was. Like, we adjust our corner weights by tightening or loosening the actual shock collars, and that will kind of press down or decompress and put more force and generate more weight on the corner. Now, I had a big difference on my front shocks. One was almost threaded all the way to the top, and one was threaded down quite a significant way. I was still able to get my corner weight and everything balanced really well, but I just didn't like the way it looked. It probably showed that something mechanically was going on. I took my shocks apart, redid them and everything else like that, and maybe I found the issue. I'm not 100% sure. We haven't actually corner scaled it yet. So while you're doing your corner scaling, you know, the other thing, of course, is going to be your actual front to back. And depending upon your surface and what you like to do, you know, 60-40 is pretty much the ballpark where everybody starts at. I've ran mine, you know, higher, 62-38, 58-42, you know, just depends on the whole bias and everything. And that's the reason why we have all of this room up here as far as battery adjustment. So we can move we could start our race day by having the battery back further. And as the road gets better and we know that the road is going to hold more power, we can actually move that battery up towards the front and change the weight bias. And we'll measure that. It's not going to be a whole lot, maybe like 1% or something like that, but it does make a big difference, especially when, you know, you're trying to just put more power down. There's no sense in having all this weight in the back if you're actually making like super great traction. So you can put it towards the front and just kind of like not bog down the back as much and give yourself more speed and acceleration. All right, so how did we do? Not too bad. I'm looking at the car and it looks like some of my issues are still there. I am really kind of puzzled why I've got such a difference in the front. The shocks were both equally smooth and everything else. It could just be the fact that there is just more weight on this side of the car with the gearing and, you know, the big heavy motors and the connectors. You know, I can kind of flip this over here a little bit. And if we plug in the battery, we could see our corner weights and everything still are the same, 50-50 from corner to corner. And we're running at 60-40 from front to back. Of course, this is going to change when we mount up our body. So we're just not doing that right now for demonstration purposes, obviously. So we don't have enough room here. I did add some metal to the car back here in the back, the aluminum high-rise adapter for the shock mount. And of course, I did switch out to aluminum hubs that were broken or just kind of wore out. But I do have the smaller Showtimes on here, not the Showtime Pluses. So that's kind of offsetting for any of the weight as well. These are the Voodoos, which of course are lighter as well. So right now we're sitting at 2,400 grams. So when we put the body on there, the Racer RC body is thicker and a little bit heavier. So it's probably going to go up another couple 100 grams. But you can see that we've got where we're at right now. We've got the battery pretty much all the way back here. We've got all of this forward room. So we're setting at 60/40 right now. I would like to have that maybe a little bit closer to 62/38. So that way I could go forward a little bit more. I've got maybe, you know, a quarter to a half inch more of play right there if I wanted to. And if we actually moved this GNSS holder up here to the front, you can see it just changes it very little. But, you know, setting the car, not just kind of laying it on the ground. A lot of people, when they stage their car, they'll just kind of set it there and you'll see people kind of tap on it. And that's one thing that you really want to do. I never really did that a lot, but it does make a dramatic difference to just kind of set everything. And that just brings all of the corner weights that you worked on together. A lot of people, when they do buggy adjustments and things like that, you'll see them kind of rolling and throwing the car, kind of lightly tossing it onto the table before they start doing, you know, their camber adjustments and things like that, just so that it's kind of in its true resting position. One thing I did notice is it looks like my dog bones are a little bit more angled than I remember. So we'll have to kind of take a look at that. Nothing really that I did should have changed that at all. I guess maybe bringing them in a little bit would have kind of pulled things together a little bit more. I actually haven't looked at it this close since I did that. I actually did that change last week, so I've been running it that way. Haven't had any issues yet, but it's something that we'll keep an eye on. When you go through a lot of changes and stuff on your car, you're always going to find something else that kind of like goes out of whack. So you want to be very careful and meticulous, especially when we're pushing these cars as hard as we are and at this high a level. You don't want to break things unnecessarily. If things sound bad or if you're getting just really weird stuff, just don't keep throwing power at it unnecessarily when you might have an actual geometry issue. Now, if I'm looking at this, I know when the car goes, it's going to raise a little bit, and that is pretty close to even right there. And that's really only about a quarter inch, you know, to a half inch raise. So it's not much. If I wanted to, I could probably put some stiffer springs in here and that might help it. But I've been having pretty good luck with these actual soft white springs. I haven't ran anything different in the car since I first built the 5-star. And we know it's capable. But, you know, since we're doing a lot of changes and playing around here, maybe that is going to be something to consider. So that is set up, guys. It's a lot of stuff. It's a very time consuming, but if you, again, have a weird offset like I seem to have, I double checked it. I rebuilt everything and it's still there. If you have a crash, something like that, if you notice your car sounds really bad going down the road, you could be having resonance issue. You know, going over this, I did find some screws were backed out. I found a strip screw as well in one of my servo kick up holder thingies. So I'm going to have to really work on that and probably get those out of there and replace those. I've got some brass ones. I don't want to add any more weight to the car, but you know, I don't really want to buy the aluminum ones when the brass ones will just a few extra grams in the front there. So with the front GPS there, of course, now is actually throwing things off, I think, a little bit too. I won't run 2 GPSs all the time. I just want to kind of compare this one to this one and see what kind of rates I'm getting, and then maybe do like a 60 foot and 132 foot, something like that. So that way we've got more data to compare on to see what we are doing to our car and what is performing and what improvements we're making. So that's it, guys. Hope you got something out of this long setup video, but very, very important stuff. So we will talk to you guys later. Peace.